All right, so now we're talking about the empty waves and something I call super listening. This is a term I just thought of, or I woke up from a nap with that term in my head. In physics, you have the term super momentum, which is this idea of the quantum superluminal momentum from the de Broglie-Bohm empty waves, also called ghost waves by Einstein, but more commonly called the quantum potential. But the key point that Basil J. Hiley emphasizes is that this is active information from the future that's always guiding the particle. And in standard physics, they emphasize the Hamiltonian, but in the Bohmian non-commutative physics, the Hamiltonian is just an infinite limit that just shows where the empty wave has no effect and cancels itself out. And what's happening is the Jordan operator is non-commutative, and so that takes priority over the Poisson bracket. So it's called the Jordan bracket. And Professor Basil J. Hiley, he's emphasizing that the Pascual-Jordan bracket is normally ignored in quantum physics. And so you have this discrete operator where the future is acting on the past, and that's the whole key of the empty waves. And they've been empirically shown to be not empty. In other words, they have this force of energy and momentum that's tied to the particle, as demonstrated in the weak measurement experiments of the Yakir Aronov research group. And these experiments are dismissed by Dr. Ruth E. Kastner, with whom I've corresponded, and other physicists, because the experiments are assuming you already have the collapse of the wave function as a particle. And then you take that result, and then you have essentially the expectation values based on the Heisenberg matrices. So you're able to just measure the momentum as a modular momentum from the future, and literally doing measurements in the future that then retroactively affect the past and the trajectory of the particle. And the reason it's dismissed is because you already know the trajectory of the particle in the past, but their point is, if you had changed the future modular momentum, then that would have changed the results of the past. And the problem with the weak measurement is that they're assuming a symmetric rest frame of relativity, whereas in the non-commutativity, you maintain the asymmetric time and frequency. And the reason it's different than the standard Schrodinger wave equation that Basil J. Hiley says we don't need is because in the Schrodinger wave equation, the frequency is assumed to be an angular frequency from Planck's constant, defining frequency as a spatial measurement based on the units of seconds. And so by assuming a symmetric spatial measurement of time as seconds, the seconds are then canceled out, so you just have the angular frequency remaining. But what you lose in that is the inherent asymmetric time and frequency that's not defined by a symmetric spatial measurement, which is what the seconds is assuming. So the matrices math of Heisenberg does not rely inherently on a angular frequency, because the color of light, the Planck's constant, is actually based on the color of light. And what Yakir Aronov and his research group point out is that the instead of the black body temperature being the basis for the Planck's constant, it's based on the color of light, because the frequency of light is trying to avoid a divergence in the wavelength. And so in the integration, so when you have this infinity, normally what Dirac and Feynman did was they ignored this quantum potential of a time-reversed negative frequency in the matrices math that Heisenberg originally recognized in the absorption spectrum of light, as Alain Connes emphasizes. And so Basil J. Hiley points out that by the renormalization process hides this non-commutative quantum potential into the kinetic energy of the Hamiltonian. And whereas in the non-commutative math, you don't need the Schrodinger wave equation dependent on the Hamiltonian. So you just rely on the non-commutative matrices itself. And this is what Eddie Oceans realized is the secret of non-Western meditation, because non-commutativity is not limited to the quantum microscale. And this is also what Pascual Jordan originally argued, is that the non-commutativity self-amplifies into the macro scale. And this is also the secret of anti-gravity levitation and anti-gravity force from this negative entropy quantum potential that the Pascual Jordan, he was a Nazi physicist, and the Nazis then used that ideology to then develop this idea of a way of canceling out gravity using mercury as a superconducting plasma, and then relying on this ionic drive. Once the gravity is canceled out, you can just rely on ionic negative entropy propulsion. And this is what the TR3B craft uses, as Ed Fauché pointed out, but the physics is all already corroborated in the peer-reviewed science. So it's not like wormhole travel, but on the microscopic level, as Olivier Cosse-de-Beauregard realized, relying on Louis de Broglie, that due to relativity having invariance of time, then the future is able to have a signal into the past. And because it's a pure time wave, it can be superluminal. And that's the whole secret of what I call super listening, because in meditation, you're not relying on a visual observation. You're just relying on logical inference of the future resonating the past, as Louis de Broglie discovered with his law of phase harmony. It's just that Louis de Broglie was still stuck in this physical ether model, as Einstein was, whereas the non-commutativity is stating that the empty wave is pure information as mathematics, and it's discrete. So it's literally what Pythagoras argued and what Alain Connes calls 2-3 infinity, and it's the secret of the non-Western music theory as alchemical meditation in quantum biology. So essentially, you're able to maintain what they call the quantum Zeno effect, where you, in the emptiness, you prevent the collapse of the wave function, because the ultrasound that you maintain through internal listening has a inherent quantum coherence, as has been corroborated by Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay's research on the Stuart Hameroff Roger Penrose quantum consciousness model. So the microtubules inherently are quantum coherent, with the tubulin as a metamaterial that then has this superluminal acoustic phonon as superradiance. And this has been the latest research of Anirban Bandyopadhyay corroborates this superradiance inside the microtubules in our neurons, and it's probably exists on a wider scale, with water, as Stuart Hameroff is starting to recognize, and the whole body, because all the matter is made of light, but the light itself has gravitational mass due to this inherent time reversed negative frequency signal that's what I call super listening, because it's based on proto-consciousness as the empty wave. So whenever you have a detector using the speed of light as a measurement for an external observation, you end up collapsing the wave function and thereby creating particles. But if you have no observation, you're able to maintain this emptiness resonance that's occurring on its own, with the future guiding the past. And this is what the meditation masters do, is they resonate with this universal life force energy it's the same negative entropy that powers the sun due to the gravitational potential originating from mass as frequency, as Roger Penrose explains. And in agreement with Erwin Schrödinger's 1944 book, What is Life?, that it has the same negative entropy origin as the gravitational potential origin of the sun before the quantum the fusion due to only based on quantum coherence. So this is the irony of the empty waves that are not empty, because they have energy and momentum, but only in relation to assuming a particle already exists. But before the particle exists, the energy as frequency is not an angular frequency tied to a symmetrical spatial measurement, nor is it a momentum inverse to a symmetrical spatial wavelength. Rather, it is an inherent time frequency that is non-commutative, and that Alain Connes calls primitive time, and Roger Penrose calls fundamental time, and math professor Louis Kaufman, who collaborated with Eddie Oceans, he calls it primordial time. And again, it's just pure time and frequency that Alain Connes just calls 2-3 infinity, because it can be explained. The simplest model of it is in music theory, where you have the Pythagorean comma defined by 3 to the 12th and 2 to the 19th. But when you bring it back into the same scale as the octave with 2, then you have 3 to the 1/19th and 2 to the 1/12th. And because of that non-commutative inversion of the exponentials back into logarithms, the origin of the irrational number is a denser, discrete frequency time spectrum that is based on the absorption of light from a superluminal discrete harmonization. And this is before any observation as quantum randomness. And so this is the focus of Alain Connes' lecture to physicists on the origin of quantum randomness, and it will also be the focus of Professor Basil J. Hiley's forthcoming paper on Alain Connes' lecture on quantum randomness. And I haven't heard back from him, so I don't know how his work is going, but we'll just patiently wait. Hopefully it'll be released. He started it last September, I think. So who knows? But he is the focus of he has a chapter about him in a new book by Harold Ottmansbacher, and and another physicist with who I've corresponded with in Australia, a physics professor, Dean Rickles. And Dean Rickles is also a pianist, and he did a lecture on music and quantum physics. And that's how I contacted Dean Rickles originally. And he said he was enjoying my research, and now he has co-written this book with Harold Ottmansbacher, who also did research on non-commutativity, and based on Primas. He was a student or collaborator with Harold Primas, who's another non-commutative quantum physicist. So this research focus on non-commutativity is growing. I have not gotten the new book by Ottmansbacher and Rickles because it's an academic book, and so it's very expensive. It just got released, so I'll try to get it through interlibrary loan, and then I can read the chapter on Basil Hiley and David Bohm. I did send that link to Professor Basil J. Hiley to let him know that there's a chapter about him in this new book. And anyway, this is why the empty waves are not empty. And Basil J. Hiley has been doing further experimental research to corroborate this with the weak measurements using actual particles with mass instead of photons. But those weak measurements have corroborated the theoretical research on the Bohmian physics that have, they've shown this non-local future modular momentum that's guiding the particle. And so these are the empty waves that are not empty. And in non-Western meditation, it's called the absolute void. The absolute void is always radiating light, whereas the relative void, when you meditate and you see light with your eyes closed, that's still the relative void because that's from the Yin Qi and the Yang Qi being separated. But when you fuse the Yin Qi and Yang Qi into Yuan Qi by rotating your eyes while meditating, and then storing it in the lower dantian and building up that Yuan Qi, and then eventually you open up the third eye, and that's when you see the absolute void, where you see light radiating externally outside your head, so that the truth of reality is this light radiating from anywhere. And when it creates new matter, it actually radiates as gold light. And you can study the relativistic quantum chemistry of the element gold. And the reason it has the color gold is due to the de Broglie law of phase harmony, where you have this relativistic phase that creates a quantum beat as a time-reversed undertone, a quantum undertone that's a subharmonic from the future. And in Taoist alchemy, this is called the superluminal golden key as yin matter. Okay, so thank you very much.